Good afternoon, everybody. So, in late 2015, an opportunity arose that would enable me to combine three big passions of mine, that is data, people, and products. And that opportunity was to come and lead a product analytics team, to lead, build, and scale that team at a company called Intercom. So Intercom is a really rapidly growing startup or company that was founded in 2011 in San Francisco by 4 Irishmen. And for those of you who may not have heard of Intercom, it's a customer communications platform, so it's an entire integrated suite of products for live chat, marketing, feedback, and support. And it basically enables you to send targeted messages to customers either within websites, in web and mobile apps, by Facebook Messenger, and by email. Intercom is probably best known for inventing in-app messaging back in 2011, and today it actually helps more than 1,300 businesses reach out to and communicate with their customers. So as an Irish person living in the Bay Area at the time, I'd actually heard about Intercom. I'd heard about their compelling mission to make internet business personal and at scale. I'd also heard about their phenomenal growth. In the past year alone, we've doubled in size to now 300 employees. But the thing that intrigued me the most is that I'd heard that they had an office in Dublin and that they decided to keep all of their R&D right here. So all of their product design and research and engineering and analytics happens right here in this beautiful city. So I was very excited. I was really excited by the opportunity to help product teams make more informed decisions using data, to innovate with data. I was really excited to be part of a really fast changing company. And this was also an opportunity that would take me home after 8 years away. So I said yes. But like all great opportunities, it wasn't without its challenges. And the most pressing of which was to give analytics at Intercom a stronger, more strategic voice. So within Intercom, there's already a set of mature teams who already have rich and strong cultures, like engineering, design, and research. And the leaders within Intercom wanted analytics to have an equally strong voice and an equally strong culture. But how do you go about doing that in a company that's evolving and changing so rapidly? Well, first you need to build a really strong analytics team with really strong foundations. And by a strong analytics team, I mean an analytics team that can enable more effective decision making. And the way in which we're thinking about doing that is in basically starting with the team, in building out the team's cultures, in how that team works, in how that team works with other people. We're also trying to create a common language with which analytics communicates with the rest of the company, and likewise that the rest of the company can understand the perspective of analytics. And we're trying to be really explicit and deliberate and vocal about these foundational things. So it's been 8 months since I joined, and the team and I have been working on a series of key elements to build these strong foundations, and today I wanted to share 4 of those with you all. The first thing we're doing is trying to foster a really open feedback culture within the team. So the culture of any team is really critical, regardless of whether the team is analytics or research or design. But I would argue that an open feedback culture is even more critical for an analytics team. And the reason is because an analytics team is here to inform decisions that basically impact change within products and the underlying business. So that means that there has to be absolute trust in the insights that we're surfacing. And really great analytics teams create opportunities for basically enhancing that trust. And they can do this in a number of ways, one of which is increasing opportunities for learning within the analytics teams. So we've done 3 things. The first thing we've done is we've implemented a process called blameless postmortems. So this is a process that was started in Etsy. And it's a means of taking mistakes or slip-ups and using them as an opportunity of learning rather than blaming and shaming. And this is already a process that's used within the Intercom's engineering org to learn from any mistakes or outages that may occur. And the idea here is to focus on how and why something happened, and more importantly, how to prevent it from happening again, rather than naming or shaming. So let's say something happens, a dashboard breaks, or we surface a piece of analytics that perhaps has a discrepancy, or we find some bad data. What we'll do is we'll actually fill in one of these post-mortem reports, where we'll focus on why and how the incident occurred, lessons we've learned from it, and then we'll get together and brainstorm key actions that we can take that prevent this from happening again. And what's really cool is that this has really led the team to learn from each other, and it's also led to a number of key action items that we've taken as a result. One of which is a peer review process for our team. So when I joined the product analytics team, there was no real way for teammates to review each other's code or queries. And what this meant is that we didn't really have a central repository to learn from or reuse. It meant that analysts were reinventing the wheel. So one of the members of the team actually led in the implementation of a new peer review process based on GitHub. This, again, is something that's used widely across the engineering team within Intercom, so we could piggyback on an existing process that was known well within the company. And after a few short months, we now have this reusable repository of queries that we can build on and learn from. And overall, it's raised the quality and the bar of the queries, the efficiency of those queries, and that in turn has led to better analytics, which in turn has led to better trust within the insights that we're surfacing across the organization. Another small thing we did was introduce a weekly understanding meeting. So this is a way for the product analytics team to get together in a really informal way and share pieces of analysis that they're working on. It might be something that's in flight. It might be something that they're actually stuck on. And the idea here is for everyone to provide open, thoughtful, and honest feedback to one another. And what this has done, again, is it's created an environment where people can really learn from each other. It's taught the analysts on the team to coach and mentor one another. And again, it's having an impact in terms of leading to better insights, better analytics, and in turn, better trust across the organization in the things that we are doing. So that is me talking about building an open feedback culture. The next thing I'd like to talk about is building closer partnerships. So I think, without maybe realizing, analytics is mainly about relationship management, probably more so than I actually thought it was before I took on this position. So one of the things we've been doing over the last few months is building closer partnerships with the product teams that we support. And one of the ways in which you can think about partnerships is how in which you work with other people. And how you work with other people is directly related to how you organize and structure your team. And in general, you can think of analytics structured in two ways: centralized teams or embedded teams. And in centralized teams, you have this central, singular analytics organization where analysts partner with business units or product teams, and they provide insights and analytics work. And there's a number of benefits to centralized analytics models. So there can be great alignment on methods across the analysts. There can be greater awareness of past work. Analysts tend to have full objectivity, and there's also this bigger picture view, which is really beneficial. But some of the downsides are that in oftentimes the analyst lacks full context into the problems that their partners are trying to solve. And in often cases, you can end up seeing much more of a reactive resource rather than a proactive partner. Embedded models is where you take individual analysts and they're actually embedded within the business units that they support, or within, in our case, the product teams. And again, there are a number of advantages, mainly being that you now have much fuller context into the problems that the product teams are trying to solve. There's a higher chance of full integration of analytics into the whole product development lifecycle, and there tends to be better alignment to product and, as a result, more effective decisions. But the downside here is that the analysts often end up working in silos. This can lead to a bunch of redundant work, and also a lack of culture and identity within the analytics team themselves. So when I joined, the product analytics team was a single central team, and it was part of a larger finance and analytics team. And the individual analysts partnered with one or two product teams, but there was definitely a disconnect. We were being seen more of a reactive resource than a proactive partner. So a few months ago, we moved to something that sits somewhere in the middle, a bit of a hybrid model. So we still have this central product analytics team, but we offer a number of ways in which we're embedding, and the level and extent at which we embed really depends on the goals and projects at hand. A really simple way in which we're embedding, and I would argue the way that's actually had the greatest impact, is now the analysts on the team attend the daily stand-ups for the product teams that they support. So what this means is that they get day-to-day context into what it is that the product teams are working on, what's top of mind, what their key goals are for the week in question. And likewise, the product team now has complete exposure to the context of the analyst, what it is that's top of mind for them, what are their key priorities. And this key change just means that there's a lot more shared context between the analyst and the product team in question. And I suppose the biggest impact here is actually that the analyst feels really part of the product team that they're supporting, that they're a key team member, and likewise that the product team really feels like the analyst is actually part of their team. And this has been a huge win for us in terms of developing closer partnerships. A second way in which we're doing this is we now have really regular metrics reviews and metrics checkpoints. And to give you a concrete example, I'm going to talk about how we run product betas. So Acquire is one of our products, and it basically enables businesses to chat with customers or visitors to their website, turn those visitors into leads, and in turn turn those leads into customers. So if a visitor to a website comes online and actually asks a question via our messenger, and if the business is not available to answer their query or question, the visitor to the site can actually leave their email address, and they'll be notified at a later point when the business responds. So we tested something called exit intent, and the idea here is that if the visitor to the website moves their mouse away from the messenger without actually leaving an email address, a new message will appear basically reminding the visitor or lead that, hey, leave an email address and we'll make sure that the business responds to you. So initial results are really positive, 16% improvement with this beta compared to a baseline. But on deeper inspection, what we actually found was that the exit intent condition was only being displayed 15% of the time. And on deeper analysis, what we found is that the improvement was really down to chance. So by having these regular metrics reviews and regular check-ins, what we actually ended up doing was creating a really nice discussion between the product team and the analyst. It meant that we dug deeper into the data. It meant that there was a lot of questions back and forth. I think if we hadn't had these check-ins, it's very likely that the product team would have chosen to go ahead from this beta to launch. And instead, they made a more effective decision. So in order to build on these seamless, close partnerships, another thing we need to do is basically have a common language with which to talk to our partners. And we're building this common language in a couple of ways. The first is in terms of how we think about and talk about data and instrumentation in Intercom. So Intercom collects a series of data that it uses to not only learn about our product, but to also personalize messages that we send to end users. And this data is sent to us in a series of events. And one of the goals of the analytics team is actually to democratize data across the company and basically enable these events to be easily understood and queried by anyone in the company. When I joined Intercom, there were over 350 of these events, and the names were pretty fast and loose and pretty inconsistent. What this meant is that the events were pretty difficult to validate. It was really difficult to attribute owners to the events. It was difficult to maintain this really long list, but most importantly, it was really difficult for anyone who wasn't an analyst to understand and make sense of or query this. So again, another initiative led by one of the folks on the team was to devise a new naming convention. And this naming convention moved us away from this flat list of event names to something more structured, more hierarchical, something that was flexible and scalable and easy to understand by non-analysts. So now every event that's fired in Intercom has an action, an object, a place, and an owner. So the event has to affect something, that's the object. The event has to happen somewhere, that's the place. And now that we have owners, it means that we actually know who these events belong to. We actually rolled this new event naming structure out with the launch of our new messenger. And what's really interesting is that before this new naming convention, if we wanted to get a full picture of how people actually use our messenger to communicate with their customers, we would have had to instrument over 500 events. With this new naming convention, we have a single owner, 8 actions, 9 objects, and 2 places, which is really cool, and it makes it an awful lot easier for folks across the company to understand. And while working on this new naming convention and rolling it out as part of our messenger, the team worked hand in hand with engineers, instrumenting, QAing, making sure that everything was ready for launch. And we're already seeing really, really big benefits. So now we have a common language that analysts and engineers can use when it comes to thinking about and talking about events and data at Intercom. We're actually rolling this out across all of our products at the moment. Another way in which we're thinking about a common language is how we actually approach metrics in Intercom. So within the product team, we care about 2 core metrics, activation and engagement. Activation being the point at which a customer first realizes the value of our product, and engagement being the extent to which a customer continues to realize the value of our product. And in my experience, most companies tend to approach metrics using a purely data-driven approach. We decided to take a different approach. So what we really wanted to do was to collaborate with the product teams on this. So we hosted a series of collaborative workshops involving all of the product team, designers, researchers, engineers, product managers, and all of the analysts. And we started to discuss what is the mission of this product? What is the value that this product is trying to deliver to customers? What behaviors is it trying to drive? And what signals can we actually find in the data that will help us assess whether we're actually driving those behaviors? And what this gave us is basically a really common language, again, to think about and talk about metrics with the product teams in Intercom. At a later point, the analytics team goes away, and yes, we look at data, but we use all of the input from the workshop to do that. And what's nice is, again, now we have this really common language that's used across the product teams in thinking about how people activate and engage within our products. The final thing that we've been focusing on over the last few months is in education. We're doing this in a couple of ways. I mentioned early on that one of the core goals of our team is to democratize data across the company, so to make it easily understood and accessible by anyone outside of the analytics team. So we have a couple of initiatives. The first is we have a dedicated office hours slot. So every Wednesday we carve out time to basically help anyone in the company with data-related questions. We use Slack really heavily in Intercom, so we have a dedicated Slack channel called Ask Product Analytics, where anyone can come in at any time and ask us any data-related question. And this can be helping them understand a specific piece of usage, helping them understand if a feature is being used by people. It might be helping them build a dashboard or even writing their own SQL queries. And we use the time we carve out on Wednesdays to actually tackle these ad hoc requests. And I'll admit that the number of ad hoc requests over the past few months has increased, and that creates its own challenges. But what's really cool about this is we're now empowering everyone in the company to be able to answer questions with data and make more effective decisions. Related to this, we've also been hosting a bunch of dedicated data tutorials, the most recent of which was a Looker tutorial led by one of the analysts on the team, Nick. So we use Looker within Intercom as our primary visualization or business intelligence tool, and Nick hosted a great tutorial trying to teach the company about how to actually use Looker and build our own dashboards. And again, as a result, we now have a group of people outside of the analytics team who are building their own dashboards to track key metrics that they and their teams care about, and that enable them to make much more effective decisions. So that's it, 8 months, and a small group of product analysts. And what we've basically done is focused on 4 elements to build these really strong foundations for analytics and Intercom. We've put in a bunch of processes that will enable us to foster more open feedback within the team, a bunch of processes and structures that will enable us to develop closer partnerships with our product teams. We're also working on setting a common framework and language across Intercom and how we think about and talk about data. And finally, we have a bunch of initiatives around educating others within the company. And all of this, all of these strong foundations are really meant so that we can deliver much better analytics, which in turn delivers much more effective decision making. This is the team, Kevin, Nick, Flora, Dag, and myself. If you too are building, scaling, or leading an analytics team, if any of this resonates with you, I'd love to learn about your own experiences and what foundations you are building for your teams. Thanks for listening.